Welcome, everyone. It's the Boots to the Boardroom podcast with the Catalyst Program. I'm your host, Blake Miles, and we're joined today by one of our great alumni, Dan Hinze. He's been, I don't want to call him a staple, but he's been a reliable member of the alumni network and great to have around. And he's had an excellent story to tell. So, Dan, how you doing today?
Doing great, Blake. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. So, the way we do these podcasts is we bring in some alumni or some member of the Catalyst Program Network that's had an impact on what we do and how we operate. And Dan definitely falls into that category. So, for those of you who don't know, the Catalyst Program is a veteran transition program. We help veterans transition out of the military into the private sector by giving them the tools they need to help translate what they did in the military into something the private sector can understand and find value in. And the way we do that is through our cohorts, and our cohorts are 6 week to 8 week long programs run with our educational partners, where we bring in veterans that have been successful in the private sector to teach our classes. Like an MBA crash course would be an easy way to think about it. So Daniel went through our, how many cohorts ago was that? Do you remember? It's been about.
It was April of last year, so it was a while ago. It was just the undergraduate. I haven't done the graduate program yet. I'm planning on doing that next year after I put some work in here.
Well, yeah, tell me about that. So you're one of our success stories, and tell us a little bit about the role you're in now and what brought you there.
All right. Yeah, just to rewind a little bit. I went through the Pivot program, which is our localized transition program for 5th Special Forces Group, the unit I retired out of. And during the Pivot program, I ran into one of the instructors for the Catalyst, who teaches the project management course, and he pitched or told us about the Catalyst through that. And I took a project management course through him, and he recommended I get in contact with Dan Hinze, who's the founder of the Catalyst. And honestly, at the time, I didn't see myself as an executive or being able to function in the business world. I was a Intel guy by trade most of my career, and I didn't see the translation into that world. So I kind of put it on the back burner, said maybe I'll get to it. But then, like you said, one of the benefits of the Catalyst program is they allow you to shotgun into your degree program, which was something I was very interested into. Not so much the business side, but definitely whatever leverage I could get to get my bachelor's done as quick as possible, I wanted to take advantage of it. So I reached out to Dan more for that aspect of it. And to be honest, the initial interaction with us, not saying it wasn't great, but it was way over my head. I didn't have any business acumen, lingo. I couldn't talk any of the talk, and it just sounded like this wasn't going to be for me. So I went through the project management course. I decided to take a different path and join one of the Army's illustrious transition programs into a trade. I like working with my hands. I figured I can do this, no problem. It's an good, honest work, good, honest living. So I signed up for the pipe fitter transition to become a journeyman. Was excited about it, and I did that for all of 2 weeks, or about a week, until I realized this is not something that I could do for the foreseeable future and continue to respect myself. Not saying it's a very respectable job. Those people, built our country, the infrastructure and keeping that. It just wasn't for me. Not after already serving 20 years in the military and retiring and doing the things that we've done. And then plus the Army kind of fluffs it a bit. They give you the good sales pitch, the 6 figures salary, the working local, being home for dinner and all that stuff. But then when you actually talk to the guys that have done it for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, the actual pipe fitters, you find out that your salary capped by region, that sure you can make six figures, but you're going to travel and all the time and be away from your family. It's like, if I was going to do that, I'd just stay in the military. So I bailed on that. The gentleman that I spoke with said to give Dan another try. He said he'd dumb it down for me a little bit. Said, I appreciate that. What are you trying to say? But called Dan again and we talked on a probably a more personal level outside of the business acumen and the executive lingo, and kind of hit home to me about what the potential of the Catalyst program is. So a few months before I retired, I joined the undergraduate cohort, and I'll be honest, it changed my perspective, and it probably changed my direction in life, honestly, because I was kind of floundering and trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And it gets scary when the closer that retirement date is coming, it gets more and more scary the closer you get. But learn the skill sets and creating the networks and the relationships with the Catalyst, not only with the Catalyst as a program, but the people. I mean, Dan and I and Liz, his wife, are great friends now. They have me over to their home all the time. I wouldn't sign for the Catalyst just to get that relationship alone would be worth it to me, even if I got nothing else out of it. But as far as the Catalyst goes, I got a fire in my belly for consulting projects and the excitement that goes on with an entrepreneurial spirit. It really sticks, when you talk about military value and your value in the civilian and executive world. It's a great translation and transition. They definitely go hand in hand.
So you mentioned about, in your assessment at the time when you were getting ready to retire, you didn't see yourself as having any business acumen, but we both know now that you do have business acumen. But if you could explain that a bit further out, draw that out a bit and kind of go from where you were versus something happened and then you came out of it feeling more confident with what you did have.
Well, it's like a lot of us say, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I've never dabbled in the civilian side of the executive world or the corporate world, but come to find out, especially I worked staff for the last 4 years of my career, come to find out those are very interrelated. I was like, you have the chain of command, you've got projects that you're developing, you're task oriented, there's so many different aspects that translate directly over into executive leadership that you don't even realize that you're doing, because it's Army training, right? The Army taught you how to do all that stuff. So it can't work in the civilian world, right? But it absolutely does. And if not efficiently, it's probably even more effective, just because the way that we're structured and our brains are trained to operate. And then you add in the grit, determination that has been pounded into us over the years. That's part of our core now. And you apply that to a civilian counterpart job, it pays itself in dividends. So
that's perfect, and that describes kind of what the underlying thesis is of the Catalyst, is that veterans have these skill sets, but the problem is they don't speak the language of business, and until they're exposed to that new language, the translation is nearly impossible to happen unless you end up grinding your face into the pavement for years to figure it out on your own. But and I think it's kind of important at this point to rewind a bit back to your background and pull that out a bit, because I think it's going to be important for the audience to hear, where did Dan come from and
talk about the war stories.
Yeah. That's nothing but war stories for the rest of the.
I like it.
But no, just go into a bit about what were you doing at your 5th Special Forces Group, What did you do there, and what sort of skill sets did you develop over the years from your perspective at the time?
All right. Yeah, I'll go back a little bit further just to lay the
Yeah.
foundation. So I never planned on joining the Army. I was going to blaze my own path. I mean, I come from a military background. My dad served, both of my older brothers served. I think looking back now, I think it's inherent. It's in your blood. Some of us, I think, to serve. But I fought against that. I was never happy really before I joined the Army. I was going to sit in racing in Wisconsin and find a job and figure out life on my own. And I'd actually worked a shift and a half one night. I was doing security at the time. And I came home, it was like 6 or 7 in the morning. I had some breakfast and turned on the news, and that was 9/11 happened. So that was the first time I think I had sat in front of, just standing there in front of the TV, just bawling. I was like, I couldn't comprehend this happening, right, to us as America. So I was like, all right, it's like time to stop running, denying this. So my brother, funny enough, my older brother at the time was a recruiter. So I called him and I was like, hey, what do I got to do? And he's like, well, start getting your affairs in order and get out of your apartment and come down here for a little while and we'll walk you through the process. And so I can never blame my recruiter for lying to me because it's my brother, and
You still find
it
them.
wouldn't work out. He'd probably still kick my butt. But so I signed up, joined as a at the time 98 Golf. Now it's a 35 Papa crypto linguist. And went through my training, Arabic, and then follow on in Texas for the actual analysis portion. While I was on the second part of my training, I decided to put in my my airborne packet because why not? Sounds great, flying out of airplanes. And my orders changed from Fort Sill to 5th Special Forces Group, and I'm like, this is gonna be awesome. I played video games before, at least. I'm gonna work with the bearded super killers, and this is gonna be amazing, and I'm gonna have cool stories to tell. So super excited about that opportunity. Went through airborne, finished that, got assigned to 5th Special Forces Group. I was there for a little less than, or I got assigned as the good thing about being a nerd and being in a Special Forces group is you don't necessarily have to just do nerd stuff. So I got assigned as a SOT-A, Special Operations Team Alpha team member right out of the gate. Went on my first deployment, OIF 4, out west to Al Qaim, primarily in Iraq, right on the border of Syria. Great first deployment, good experiences, a lot of violence, a lot of excitement. Came back, did OIF 6, 7, and then we handed it back over to Iraq, back over to the State Department. So Iraq pretty much ended for us then. Picked up, or didn't feel like leaving 5th Group, didn't feel the need to leave 5th Group. They kept promoting me and kept paying me more, so why would I? And at the time, you get your Sierra identifier, you can almost stay as long as you want.
Real quick, what's the CR identifier? I don't even know what that is.
Basically, it allocates you or prioritizes you to maintain yourself in a soft unit. So not necessarily 5th Group, but it could be used as SOC, it could be, but it'll keep you in the soft community. They've changed that since then because they want more career diversification. But at the time, I just wanted to be operationally relevant, honestly. I wasn't even thinking about career advancement at that point. But so finished off Iraq. We had a slight delay because we were figuring out what our next mission set is, and then 5th Group picked up Afghanistan too. So I hit OIR 19, or I'm sorry, OEF 19, excuse me, all the acronyms, in Afghanistan from 2012 to 2013. Came home, and my Arabic skills had lessened since we're not really using them as much as we were in Iraq, and had issues with the DLPT. So instead of it affecting my career, I decided to reclass to a SIGINT specific MOS, which was pretty much a parallel transition. But that dumped me back in the Army system. Ended up going to Fort Bliss for a few years, picked up E8 and first sergeant there. Great place, but just it wasn't home to me. And then fifth group reached out looking for E8s that wanted to fall out of airplanes because apparently there's not a lot of them. So I hung up my diamond, I hung up my first sergeant, and I went back to fifth group. Because once again, I wanted to be operationally relevant. I want to be in the fight. I thought that was important. If we're gonna do that job, we got to do it for a reason. So, but then I got another deployment out of it and went into staff. So much for that. So I retired out of fifth group July of last year. So, and it's been a wild ride ever since.
Excellent. So you were a linguist, and that's always interesting to me, primarily due to a bit about like what I've noticed going through the Catalyst myself. I went through the first Indiana Wesleyan cohort in early 21. And since then I've been behind the curtain for all the other cohorts. And over this time and all these different cohorts, I've really solidified this vision of what the problem set is in the veteran transition space. And I've defined it as a cultural linguistic problem between the military language and the private sector language. And there's a gap in between the language veterans speak versus the language business speaks and what they're both looking for out of each other. So from your perspective as a linguist, how did that process go in terms of translating your skill sets, translating what you've done, translating the value sets and the skill sets that you've picked up over 20 years in the military into the private sector?
That's a good question. From the linguistic perspective, it's honestly more of a interpersonal thing. It's the nuances of how people speak, the being able to read people, how people use certain words, or don't, or avoid using certain words. I can tell a lot about a person, especially now in this very diverse world that we live in. It's good to be able to pick up on those because people hold certain things truths to themselves that 15, 20, 30 years ago they didn't. So we have to try and respect that as much as possible. Not necessarily agree with it, but respect it.
Sure.
And then the transition from excuse me, linguist into core analyst job. The analyst job definitely helps because you can run the numbers. Pros and cons are easier to decipher. You become a list person. So how things are structured more so than the nuances. So combining those two has definitely been helpful. And then obviously in my current job, the analysis portion is always great.
Yeah. And so you also had the SIGINT background too from the military. And if you could explain a bit about that and if there was any skill sets you think translated from that. I think you probably already touched on it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, as a SIGINT analysis, you're trained to do patterns and pattern of life. So I think it gives you a better, the tricky part about that is applying it without being cold.
Yeah.
You have to apply it on a more personal level, like you're trying to get to know somebody as a person, not as a target. So but being able to apply that's definitely helpful. Just learning the right questions to ask to get to know somebody, being able to look at somebody's spreadsheet or balance and being like, yeah, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't fit in the pattern. Being able to analyze things like that definitely helps. Definitely it's different, but the concept is still there.
And so that's probably something I should address or have you address more specifically is what's your current role, and explain that a bit and what you're doing now.
Well, like I said, relationship with Dan and Liz Hance, the founders of the Catalyst great relationship with them. They gave me, after I graduated the IWU cohort back in April, they invited me out to meet them and see where they live and whatnot, and just kind of get to know them on a more personal level. And through that, Dan introduced me to some of the alumni and some locals. He also introduced me to who my current boss is now, Kenny Blickenstaff. He's the founder of Titan Investment Management in Indianapolis. Didn't expect to come in and get a job. I was just kind of meeting people, networking and relationship building. But Dan introduced me to him, and that same week set up an interview with him, and it was amazing. The values were it was very easy to transition the values that we appreciate and are at our core from the military over to what I do now. So now I'm a wealth manager and investment advisor, so for Titan Investments.
Excellent. And I know previous conversations you and I have had, and going out and spending time with Kenny, we went to a Purdue football game, which
Terrible game.
didn't go well for Purdue. However, it was
It was rainy, but it was still fun.
Yeah, had fun.
After 2 beers, it wasn't as cold.
Warms up a bit.
Yeah.
So through those conversations, something that I noticed was that, you know, there's this sense of, you know, from Kenny's perspective, he has a bit of, not a bit, it's like it's an obvious, you know, form of outward respect for our backgrounds and what we've done.
Right.
But from your perspective, there's the respect for what Kenny has done in the business world.
Absolutely.
And so if you could, like,
in my opinion, he's a self-made man. I mean, he's obviously had people that have lifted him up along the way, but he's taken a long path of education and training and realized that things can be done in a more honest way than your average broker or your plug and play investment site. And he took that along with his programming knowledge, and it created an impressive program to make people a lot of money if they want it.
Excellent. And so if you could, like, what about the role that you're in now do you think translated the best with your skill sets that you picked up in the military?
Definitely in the analysis. Honestly, a lot of it has to do with how we were trained to present in boards, go into boards, that confidence presentation, creating a good PowerPoint's always good here. You know, document management, records keeping is huge. As far as the actual the sales portion of what we do, yeah, it definitely lends itself to the briefings that your higher level officers would expect you to present. You don't want to go in, you know, pardon the language, half-assed to a client and expect them to give you the time of day. So you have to take that same approach. Like, this mission has to happen, sir. This is how we're going to make it happen, you know. So, and you give them their options, and it's definitely applicable on what we learn to do in the military.
That confidence component, because that's something that always stands out to me, and it was always the running thesis even before I got into the Catalyst, is the confidence level in veterans' ability to pick up a new skill, attack a problem set. Like, kind of, if you could go into a bit of that from your own experience on how that confidence played out for you in the earlier days of just starting out.
Well, for me, it's not necessarily applies to everybody, but for me, it's like I've done all this in my career. This should be a cakewalk. I was like, are they shooting at me? No. Is it in Arabic? No. We're good then. But it's when we've gone through what we have for our past careers, live in the civilian world should not be difficult. It's just so you take that mentality into it and the grit and determination that I am going to succeed because I can succeed. So I'm going to make that happen. You take your own destiny and your own fate into your hands, and like I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna change any preconceived notions of veterans, or I come from a very impoverished background. Is like that's not me anymore. I am this man that I create. So, and you go into that with that mentality, and you can do just about anything.
You kind of mentioned too, like when you got out of the military initially, your first instinct was to jump into the more hands-on pipe fitter role, but you quickly got the sense that that wasn't where you wanted to be for the next, X number of years.
Yeah.
That mentality versus where you're at now, what do you think the biggest difference is between the two?
Well, that mentality changed after a week and a half outside in Nashville in a developing high-rise building in the cold. And I realized this is not what I want to do, and I have way more potential than that. At the time, I convinced myself that it would have been respectable and it's okay, but that's all it really would have been, is okay. Like I said, when we've done what we've done, I think not only we have the ability to, but I think the world expects us to do more with that. So I think it would be an injustice to just be okay, to just get by. And I look, honestly, a lot of what I do is for my kids. It's like, if I'm not going to do it, why would they do it? So that's probably my biggest driving factor.
That's something too, but good.
No, I was just going to say, being where we've been, we could probably manage on a cot in a dirty room somewhere and be just fine.
Yeah. But
do I ever want that for my children? No, yeah. I don't. So I will work the hours. My second career, I don't have a problem doing that to give them an example and to give them a much better jump start on life than what I had going into the military, 20 years ago.
So going back to the cohort time, your time in the cohort, was there a specific lesson or a specific set of instructions? You mentioned the consulting project really got your attention, but aside from the consulting, we'll pull on that thread next, but was there another course that really stood out as something that interested you that you didn't expect?
Honestly, the biggest thing that kind of turned the light bulb on was early on. It was when you and Renee, when we just started transition military value into civilian and corporate value, taking our NCOERs and our military experience and how it translates over into the corporate world. It definitely takes the darkness and kind of lighten, shines a light on it and be like, okay, heck, I can be a CEO right now. Maybe not, but could definitely get to that point.
Yeah.
Just based off of what we've done. Well, I was in longer than some, but based off of how my career progressed, you could see it as how your career would progress in the corporate world, right? You start out as a worker bee, you move up to management, and then to middle management, up to the upper management, and then eventually you move into the C-suite. So it's a progression that we don't really realize while we're in the military, because it's just rank structure. But if you apply it to the corporate world, it's very applicable.
What's the biggest difference you've seen so far between the leadership perspective in the military versus leadership in the private sector, you think?
There's a lot more passiveness than passivity. I don't know. I guess it depends on the person.
Sure.
Like Ken is a very direct. If I didn't know better, I would say he was in the military at some point.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. He was just a wrestler and a very direct person. Everybody's got a different personality. But like when I did the pipe fitting thing, the management there was just very lackadaisical and it happens type of mentality. And I'm like, no, we got to get this done. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I know we got to get it done. There's just a different mentality there than what you would normally see in the military. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously the different personalities are going to have an impact on that, but it's something I've heard before too, is just, you have this one expectation of what leadership and getting the mission done looks like, as opposed to, hey, we're just,
it'll get done.
Yeah. Someone's going to do it. That's what we
get it done.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the consulting project, we'll pull on that thread now. So what do you like about consulting? Like what stood out to you? What kind of gravitated you towards that world?
I think it's well, first off, it's the problem solving thing. They come to us with a problem and we give them a set of potential solutions. Very, very applicable to mission planning, right? And then the other thing is the finding ways to product improvement or service improvement aspect. Like you're taking something and you're making it better, or you should be making it better. Otherwise, your consulting project isn't very effective.
Yeah.
So, especially when we dealt with, I think one of ours was the nonprofit for the was it Kids Codes? That was awesome. Whether or not they took any of the advice, I don't know, but it was a very honorable mission set, and I think that a lot of the advice that came out of there was really solid. And if they would have applied it, could have severely changed the structure of their whole operation.
And I'll touch on that real quick too. I don't think I covered it, but so a big part of the cohorts with the Catalyst program are consulting projects. We kind of view them as our capstone projects. And what we do is we build relationships with these different organizations in the private sector, build partnerships with them, and develop consulting projects for our candidates to run through with. So we have an introduction session where the candidates get to meet for about an hour and a half and ask questions from the leadership of the organization. And we present them with a scope of work. Like here's what the organization is looking to accomplish with their time with you. So assign you to your teams and let you run wild with it. What was some of your key takeaways that you got from your consulting projects that you did with your teams during the cohorts?
Well, my last consulting project, we were so amped up about that, we almost started our own LLC. We had a name and logo and everything. It's gonna be Rogue Catalyst Consulting. But we went a different route. But
You're a good I remember that.
Big takeaways, honestly, is just like with the business I'm in now, is sometimes it's hard to convince people to do what's in their best interest. It's difficult. And when somebody has a product or a lifestyle that's in their favor, that they think's in their favor, or it's their baby, right? They have a hard time letting somebody else try and take care of and raise their baby for them. So a lot of the times it's difficult to convince people of positive change, even if it is in their best interest. I think that's just human nature in general. We hold on to the things that we care about.
For sure.
But it's I just like the process, honestly. The identifying the problem, coming up with solutions, applying the solutions, and seeing what the results are. So it's the process to me. And then obviously the outcome is great.
Yeah. Especially if you get to see the outcome play out and it works
like
out.
Spoke Note, we're seeing a little bit of that outcome from our consulting project. I think he applied some of what we recommended there. He's doing the little Spoke Notes on, was it on jerseys now? What I understand. So pretty cool applicability there.
Yeah, and for the audience, Spoke Note is one of our partners, ran by John Wexler, who's a former Marine. I always forget. I think he's former Army. He's an Army or Marine. He'll probably harass me on that if he
He'll
hears.
be upset if he watches this.
Yeah, you don't want to call a Marine former Army, and you don't want to call former Army a Marine. They'll fight you for it. But no, John's done great work in the state of Indiana and entrepreneurship and for veterans. But he runs Spoke Note, which is a company that produces QR codes that are tied to video links that people can create. Very innovative product, and it's doing a lot of great things. So, all right, yeah, that's those were some good consulting projects. I remember those.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with those.
Yeah. So where you're at now, you've been with Kenny and Titan for coming up on a year. Well, you're about
August will be a year. I started
yeah.
August of last year.
So what are you seeing like in terms of how you're feeling about the future and what direction you're headed and what you're specifically, I guess, or talk a bit about your goals, where they were, at the start of the cohort last year versus where your goals sit now.
My goals at the start of the cohort, or even before that, were honestly just to retire and find a job,
Right off and
be comfortable. Very
yeah.
very limited generic goals. Spend more time with my kids. The usual check the boxes post military retirement. But since the Catalyst and the cohort and starting this position, it's like a what's next mentality. Like let's climb that next hill. Let's achieve that next thing, whatever it is. And right now, for me, honestly, it's building my own wealth, creating legacy. I don't just want to sit on the couch and be okay. I want to do great things to inspire my kids, and if I do this right, it'll influence in a positive way, hopefully my grandkids, or maybe even my great grandkids. I was like, if I do this right, I can change that poverty mentality that I've inherited, so that my kids don't get it. And it's important to me.
No, it's great. And that's I think that's probably something, I don't want to say common with veterans from the military, but it's a lot of veterans come from that mindset anyway, or they come from that world where, they grew up in either low income to middle income, and they're okay with that. And without
I don't want to be okay with that anymore.
Yeah, no, that's a good place to be, because it puts that. It's something that we try to remind veterans in week one in our cohorts, is that whatever it was that made you willing to stand in front of the raise your right hand in front of the big flag and swear an oath to the Constitution. Whatever it was that motivated you to take that leap, you can find that again in the private sector and motivate.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from that same perspective, you're willing to raise your hand and possibly sacrifice your life. That's the ultimate end state of our job.
Yep.
Is you're willing to give your life. Why not do that in your civilian life too? Put it all on the line. What do you got to lose?
Yeah.
So, not saying you're going to lose your life. Let's not. If you apply that same mentality of give it all, even if you go through struggles and downtimes, you're bound to come out on the other side better off than if you go into life with the concept of, let's just be okay. I'll be okay.
Yeah, just roll with it. Yeah. That's a very good point. So I think that covers the majority of the topics in the spread about Catalyst and your current role. Where are you at personally, mentally, like not Dan the employee, Dan.
Oh, that'd have to be a whole nother podcast. No,
We
things are good. They're rough. I mean, like we didn't get into it too much, but I'm geo-batting, and for anybody that's not in the military doesn't know what that is I'm geographically in a different location than my family right now because my wife's dad's in poor health. So I would be a bad guy a very bad guy if I plucked them out of that area away from her dad in his current condition. So that's hard. I feel like I've gone back on my word a little bit of not being around the kids as much as planned coming out of the military because of our separation. But I get out to see them every other weekend. They come out here every other weekend. So we see each other as much as possible. Now that summer break, we'll be around each other more often. My daughter's actually got her first dance recital Saturday. So we're all excited about that in her little ballerina outfit. So that'll be fun. But no, doing good. Stay in the gym. Actually just bought a Go Ruck rucksack. I'm gonna start rucking again a couple times a week. Try and get some of the bourbon off the.
I've noticed
just fighting age. That's what we do in the end.
Well, I was gonna say I've noticed recently that putting a rucksack back on, it puts you back in some weird happy state in your head. That
happy angry state is weird.
Yeah, I'm like I'm comfortable and I remember all this.
It is. It's definitely. But when you hump miles and miles and miles with a rucksack, whether it sucks so bad, it still brings back some sense of euphoria because you were with your guys. Then there's team building going on.
Yeah.
There's usually. Even though it sucks, there's usually good memories associated with it.
Yeah.
So that almost transports you back. Even when I was getting it ready, putting the little plates in, I was like, this is going to be awesome. This is going to suck. So I haven't actually put it on yet. We'll see how that goes. Let me watch my spine implode.
Hopefully not. Hopefully the spine stays intact.
Yeah, hopefully it holds up.
Important piece of equipment usually.
Yeah, well, you can get it replaced now. It's fine.
That's true. Be robot Dan.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, things are good. Staying busy, working out. It's I think exercise is important for not just physical, but definitely mental health for our community.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of the reasons that we have issues with mental health with a lot of our guys is they sit on that couch and they go to the dark places and they can't get out of it.
Yeah.
But, one of my therapies is at the gym, honestly, regardless of how bad the day is, the gym is always there for me.
Yeah.
Especially since mine's 24 hours, so I can go anytime.
Being able to move steel at will is always a good feeling.
It's important.
Yeah. So I think probably one last thread that I like to pull on, or if I haven't done it in the past, I'm sure I'll get more into a habit of it. But if you could offer some guidance, some recommendations to veterans that are either transitioning, planning on going to Catalyst, one or some other organization, what sort of recommendations, tips, guidance would you offer?
Gosh, it's a lot of, no pressure.
None at all.
Honestly, it's simple. It's believe in yourself and believe in your value. I mean, it's hard sometimes, especially when things are down, but God, the things that we've gone through and the things, the hardships, just think of what you've already overcome to get to where you're at. The next phase in life should be a cakewalk. It should be fun. Make it fun. Do something you love. There's no point in being miserable for your second career if this is your second career. Find something you love and just run away with it. Be great. As great as you want to be. Not everybody wants to be great. Some people just want to be okay.
Not everybody gets to be an astronaut. That's one of my favorite sayings.
It's true. I could never be. I'm shade blind. I couldn't even be a pilot. They're all worried about you can't see red, green good enough. I was like, what do you need that in a plane? It's fine.
That's overrated.
Red and there's buttons and stuff.
Yeah, there's switches and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's important, I guess.
So,
They just need to paint them a different color that you
yeah,
understand.
or just go black and white. You know, the light button is good. The dark button is bad.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Pick
Pick two colors and stick with it.
Awesome. Well, I don't think there's anything else that I have on my list on questions to ask for you. Any closing comments that you have before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. We'll have to catch another game or some tacos again soon.
I like the sound
in
of that.
person.
Maybe we'll have to go to a Purdue basketball game next time.
It'd probably be less depressing.
Yeah.
And
Or when they're not playing.
they play indoors too, so that's good.
Yeah, they're not getting rained on.
Yeah.
Maybe Purdue volleyball. I think I don't know if it'll be good or not, but
it'd be fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well,
All right,
awesome.
brother.
Well, I greatly appreciate it, Dan. It's always a pleasure talking with you. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your time with us, and looking forward to talking more with you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Absolutely. You too. I appreciate it.